The letter was ashes before Caleb could scream. It had taken him 17 years to write ivory word a shard of his heart, carved out in the quiet of his bedroom in Maplewood, New Jersey. Now, as the flames licked the edges of his truth, he stood frozen, watching his stepmother, Diane, drop the last smoldering fragment into the backyard fire pit. Caleb's chest tightened, his breath shallow. He'd left the letter on his desk, a confession meant for his father, Tom, a man who'd always been more shadow than presence. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Dad, I'm gay. I've known since I was 12. I'm scared, but I'm done hiding. He'd planned to give it to Tom tomorrow, after months of agonizing, after years of dodging questions about girlfriends and prom dates. But Diane had found it first. Diane, who'd swept into their lives 6 months ago with her pressed blouses and church smiles, calling Caleb her son like it was a badge she'd earned. Caleb, she said now, her voice low, almost trembling. This isn't you. It's confusion. You're young. Her eyes darted to the fire pit, where the last of his words curled into nothing. I did this for you. For us. For your father. For me. His voice cracked, raw with betrayal. He wanted to lunge at her, to shake her, to demand why she thought she could erase him. But his feet stayed rooted, his hands clenched into fists. The backyard, with its neatly trimmed hedges and Tom's old grill, felt like a stage for someone else's life, one where Caleb didn't belong. He'd grown up in this house, a split-level relic of the 80s, where Tom's grief over Caleb's mother lingered like damp rot. She died when Caleb was 6, leaving behind a void Tom filled with work and silence. Caleb had learned to navigate the quiet, to keep his secrets tucked away like the comic books he hid under his mattress. But when Tom married Diane, everything shifted. She was all sharp edges and forced warmth, filling the house with her casseroles and her rules. She'd insisted on family dinners, on church every Sunday, on fixing the broken pieces of their home. Caleb had tried to play along, to be the son she wanted, but he was so tired of pretending. I wasn't ready for him to know, Caleb said, his voice barely above a whisper. But it was mine to tell him, not yours to burn. Diane's face softened, but only for a moment. You don't understand, Caleb. This would break him. He's been through enough. We all have. She stepped closer, her hand reaching out, but he flinched away. I'm trying to protect you. The world, it's not kind to people like me. He cut her off, his voice rising. Say it, Diane. Gay. I'm gay. And you just burned the one thing that might have made my dad see me. She froze, her lips parting, but no words came. The silence between them was heavier than the smoke curling into the dusk. Caleb turned and bolted into the house, his sneakers pounding against the hardwood. He didn't stop until he reached his room, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. Inside, the space felt smaller, suffocating. His desk was still cluttered with pencils and half-finished sketches, drawings of boys with kind eyes, worlds where he could be himself. He sank to the floor, back against the bed, and pressed his palms to his eyes, trying to hold back the tears. The letter was gone, but the truth wasn't. He'd written it to free himself, to finally bridge the gap between him and Tom. Now, that bridge was ash, and Diane stood guard over the ruins. He didn't hear Tom come home that night. The low hum of the TV downstairs, Diane's voice murmuring, kept the house alive while Caleb stayed locked in his room. He pulled out his sketchbook, his fingers trembling as he drew. A boy, alone, standing in a field of fire. It was messy, jagged, but it was his. If Diane thought burning his words would silence him, she was wrong. He'd find another way to tell his truth even if it meant facing her. Facing Tom. Facing the whole damn town. The next morning, Caleb woke to the smell of coffee and the clatter of dishes. Diane was in the kitchen, humming some hymn, acting like nothing had happened. Tom sat at the table, reading the paper, his glasses perched low on his nose. Caleb stood in the doorway, his heart pounding. He wanted to scream, to tell Tom everything right then, but the words stuck in his throat. Diane glanced at him, her eyes a warning. Don't. Caleb, you okay? Tom asked, looking up. His voice was gruff, tired, but there was a flicker of concern in it. Caleb swallowed hard. Yeah. He lied. Just didn't sleep well. Tom nodded, already back to his paper. Diane slid a plate of eggs in front of Caleb, her smile tight. Eat up. Hon. Big day at school. Caleb pushed the plate away. He wasn't her son. He wasn't her anything. But as he grabbed his backpack and headed out, he made a silent vow he'd rewrite the letter. He'd tell Tom himself. And no one, not Diane. Not the town. Not his own fear would stop him. At school, Maplewood High buzzed with the usual chaos. Lockers slammed. Laughter echoed. And Caleb moved through it like a ghost. He'd always been good at blending in, keeping his head down. But today, he felt exposed. Like Diane's fire had stripped him bare. He found refuge in the art room, where Ms. Rivera, the teacher with paint-stained jeans and a kind smile, let him stay during lunch. You look like you're carrying the world, kid, she said, glancing up from her canvas. Caleb shrugged, sketching in his notebook. Just family stuff. She didn't push, but her eyes lingered, seeing more than he wanted. Art's good for that. Lets you say what words can't. He nodded, his pencil tracing the outline of a boy who looked a little like him, standing tall against the storm. Maybe Ms. Rivera was right. Maybe he could find a way to speak without speaking. But first, he needed to face Diane and the letter she'd destroyed. That afternoon, Caleb walked home slowly, his mind racing. He didn't know how to confront her. Didn't know if he could. But as he turned onto his street, he saw something that stopped him cold. A boy, about his age, leaning against a lamppost, watching him. Dark hair, sharp jaw, eyes that seemed to know too much. Caleb's heart skipped. He didn't recognize him, but something about the boy felt familiar. Hey, the boy called out, his voice low, teasing. You're Caleb, right? Caleb froze, his bag heavy on his shoulder. Who are you? The boy grinned, stepping closer. Name's Eli. Just moved here. Heard you're the guy to know in this town. Caleb's throat tightened. No one had ever looked at him like that, like he was someone worth knowing. But before he could respond, Diane's car pulled into the driveway, and her eyes locked onto them. Caleb felt a chill. She'd burned his letter. What would she do if she saw him talking to a boy like Eli? Caleb's pulse raced as Diane stepped out of her car. Her purse clutched tightly. Her gaze flicked between him and Eli, sharp as a blade. "Caleb, who's this?" she asked. Her voice syrup-sweet, but laced with something colder. "This is Eli," Caleb said, forcing his voice steady. "He's new." Eli extended a hand, his grin unfazed. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Diane," she said, shaking his hand briefly, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Caleb's stepmother." The word son hung in the air, heavy with her claim. Caleb's stomach churned. She'd called him that from day one. But after last night's fire, it felt like a lie. "Gotta run," Eli said, winking at Caleb. "See you around, man." He sauntered off, leaving Caleb with a mix of relief and something else, something warm and dangerous. Inside, Diane's demeanor shifted. "You need to be careful who you hang out with," she said, setting her purse on the counter. "This town talks." Caleb's jaw clenched. "He's just a guy? Diane." Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't push. Instead, she busied herself with dinner prep, chopping vegetables with precise, angry slices. Caleb retreated to his room, his mind on Eli. Who was he? And why did his smile make Caleb's chest feel like it was unraveling? The next few days were a tightrope. Caleb avoided Diane, eating in his room, sketching until his fingers ached. He drew Eli those knowing eyes, that easy grin over and over, each stroke a rebellion against Diane's fire. At school, Eli seemed to appear everywhere, by Caleb's locker, in the cafeteria, always with a quip or a look that made Caleb's heart stutter. They talked about music, about the town's suffocating sameness, but Caleb kept his guard up. Trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. One afternoon, in the art room, Eli showed up unannounced, leaning against the doorframe. "Heard you're the resident artist," he said, nodding at Caleb's sketchbook. Caleb flushed, closing it quickly. "Just messing around." "Let me see." Eli's tone was light, but his eyes were serious. Against his better judgment, Caleb handed it over. Eli flipped through, pausing at a sketch of a boy in a storm, his face half hidden. "This you?" he asked softly. Caleb shrugged, his throat tight. "Maybe." Eli handed the book back, his fingers brushing Caleb's. "It's good. You're good." The air between them crackled, and Caleb felt exposed, like Eli could see the truth he hadn't yet spoken. "Why are you here?" Caleb asked, his voice low. "In Maplewood. I mean." Eli's grin faded. "Dad got a job. Mom didn't come with us. Long story." He looked away, then back at Caleb. "What about you? What's your deal?" Caleb hesitated. He wanted to tell Eli everything, the letter, Diane, the weight of his secret, but fear held him back. "Just trying to survive," he said finally. Eli nodded, like he understood more than Caleb had said. "Yeah, me too." That night, Caleb couldn't sleep. He kept replaying Eli's touch, his words. He wanted to trust him, to let someone in. But Diane's shadow loomed. She'd burned his letter. What would she do if she knew about Eli? about the way Caleb's heart raced when he was near. The next morning, Caleb found a note slipped under his door. Diane's handwriting, "We need to talk. Tonight." His stomach dropped. He spent the day distracted, barely hearing his teachers, his mind on Diane's intentions. Was she planning to confront him again? To tell Tom? At school, Eli found him in the library, where Caleb was hiding with his sketchbook. "You look like hell," Eli said, sliding into the chair across from him. "Thanks," Caleb muttered, but a smile tugged at his lips. Eli had that effect, making the world feel lighter, even when it wasn't. "Want to ditch last period?" Eli asked, his eyes glinting. "There's this spot by the creek. Quiet. No one bothers you." Caleb hesitated. Skipping class wasn't his thing, but the idea of escaping, even for an hour, was tempting. "Okay," he said finally. "But if we get caught." "We won't," Eli said, already standing. "Come on." The creek was a hidden gem behind the town's old mill, where willows draped over the water and the air smelled of damp earth. Eli led the way, his confidence infectious. They sat on a flat rock, tossing pebbles into the stream. And for the first time in days, Caleb felt like he could breathe. "So," Eli said, leaning back on his elbows, "you gonna tell me what's eating you?" Caleb's heart thudded. He wanted to spill it all, the letter. Diane. His fear of Tom's reaction, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he said, "My stepmom. She's got this idea of who I'm supposed to be. And I'm not that guy." Eli studied him, his gaze steady. "Who are you?" Then, Caleb's breath caught. He could lie, deflect, like he always did. But Eli's eyes held no judgment, only curiosity. "I'm figuring it out," he said, his voice barely audible. Eli nodded, tossing another pebble. "Fair enough. Takes time." They sat in silence, the creek's murmur filling the space. Caleb felt a pull toward Eli, a longing to close the distance between them. But fear of Diane, of himself, kept him still. When he got home, Diane was waiting. She sat at the kitchen table, her hands folded, her face unreadable. "Caleb," she said, "we need to set some things straight." He braced himself, his bag still on his shoulder. "About what?" "About you. About this family." Her voice was calm, but her eyes were steel. "I saw you with that boy today. Eli, you need to be careful. People notice things." Caleb's blood ran cold. "We're just friends." "Are you?" she asked, leaning forward. "Because I'm trying to keep this family together. Caleb, your father doesn't need more pain." "Pain?" Caleb's voice rose, anger flaring. "You burned my letter. You don't get to decide what hurts him." Diane's face paled, but she didn't back down. "I did what I thought was right. You're young. You don't understand." "I understand plenty," Caleb snapped. He turned and stormed to his room, his heart pounding. Diane wasn't just a gatekeeper. She was a wall, standing between him and his truth. But walls could be climbed. Or broken. Caleb didn't sleep that night. Diane's words echoed in his head. A warning wrapped in concern. People notice things. He stared at the ceiling, his sketchbook open on his chest. The boy in the storm staring back. He wanted to tell Eli everything to unburden himself, but the risk felt too great. Diane was watching. And Maplewood wasn't the kind of town that forgave differences easily. At school, Eli was waiting by Caleb's locker. His usual grin replaced by something softer. "You didn't text back last night," he said, leaning against the metal. "Everything okay?" Caleb hesitated, his fingers tightening around his backpack strap. "Yeah. Just family stuff." Eli's eyes searched his. And for a moment, Caleb thought he might push. But Eli just nodded. "Want to hit the creek again after school? Got something to show you." Caleb's heart lifted, despite himself. "Sure." The day dragged, each class a blur of notes and noise. In art, MS. Rivera caught him staring out the window. "Caleb," she said, her voice gentle. "You're somewhere else today? Want to talk?" He shook his head, but her kindness cracked something in him. "Just trying to figure out how to say something big," he admitted. She smiled, setting down her brush. "Sometimes you don't need words. You've got your art. Use it." Her words stuck with him as he met Eli at the creek. The air was cooler now, fall creeping into Maplewood's edges. Eli led him to a clearing where a small canvas leaned against a tree, painted with bold strokes of blue and gold, a figure standing against a fiery sky. Defiant. "You did this?" Caleb asked, stunned. Eli shrugged, a little shy. "Yeah. Thought you'd get it. You know, standing tall, no matter what." Caleb's throat tightened. The figure could have been Heim or Eli. It was both of them. Maybe. Fighting their own battles. "It's amazing," he said, his voice thick. Eli's hand brushed his, lingering a second too long. "You're not alone, Caleb. Whatever's going on, you don't have to carry it by yourself." The words hit like a wave, and Caleb's resolve crumbled. "My stepmom, she found a letter I wrote to my dad. About me. About being gay." The confession spilled out, raw and unsteady. "She burned it. Said it was for my own good." Eli's face darkened, his jaw tight. "That's messed up. She had no right." Caleb nodded, tears stinging his eyes. "I don't know how to tell him now, or if I even should." Eli sat beside him, their shoulders close. "You tell him when you're ready. Not her. Not anyone else. You." Caleb looked at him, the weight of Eli's words sinking in. For the first time, he felt seen not as Tom's son, or Diane's project, but as himself. He wanted to lean closer, to let the moment stretch. But fear pulled him back. "What if he hates me?" he whispered. Eli's hand found his. A quiet anchor. "Then he's an idiot. But you won't know until you try." They sat there until the sun dipped low, the creek's murmur a steady heartbeat. Caleb felt lighter, like he'd shed a layer of armor. But when he got home, Diane was waiting again, her face a mask of calm. "We're going to church tomorrow," she said, her tone final. "As a family." Caleb's stomach twisted. Church was Diane's domain, her sanctuary of rules and judgment. "I've got homework," he said, trying to dodge. It's not optional, she replied, her eyes hard. You need this, Caleb. We all do. He didn't argue. He couldn't, not yet. But as he lay in bed that night, he started a new letter in his head. Not on paper, not where Diane could find it, but in his heart. He'd tell Tom, not because he was ready, but because he had to. For himself. For Eli. Sunday morning. The church was packed, the air thick with perfume and whispers. Diane sat beside Tom, her hand on his arm, her smile a performance. Caleb sat in the back, his mind on Eli, on the canvas by the creek. The sermon droned on sin, redemption, family, but Caleb barely listened. He was done hiding. After the service, Diane cornered him outside. I know you're angry, she said, her voice low. But I'm trying to protect you. This lifestyle you're chasing, it's not God's plan. Caleb's blood boiled. It's not a lifestyle, Diane. It's who I am. Her face tightened. But before she could respond, Tom called her over. Caleb seized the chance to slip away, his heart racing. He texted Eli, meet me at the creek. Need to talk. Eli was there when Caleb arrived, sitting on their rock, his canvas propped nearby. You okay? He asked, standing. Caleb shook his head. I'm done letting her control me. I'm telling my dad. Tonight. Eli's eyes widened, but he nodded. You sure? No, Caleb admitted, a shaky laugh escaping. But I can't keep waiting. Eli stepped closer, his hand grazing Caleb's arm. You got this. And I'm here. Okay. Caleb's breath hitched. The space between them felt electric. Alive. He wanted to close it, to feel Eli's warmth. But the weight of the day held him back. Thanks, he said, his voice soft. For everything. As he walked home, the letter took shape in his mind. It wasn't just for Tom and Marie, it was for him. For the boy he was becoming. Diane could burn 1,000 letters, but she couldn't burn his truth. Caleb's hands shook as he sat at his desk, a fresh sheet of paper before him. The house was quiet. Tom was at work, Diane at her book club. He decided to rewrite the letter. But this time, he'd give it to Tom himself. No intermediaries. The words came slowly. Each one a battle, Dad. I need you to know who I am. I'm gay. I've been scared to tell you. But I'm not ashamed. He wrote about his fears, his hopes, his need for Tom to see him. It wasn't perfect, but it was his. He folded the letter, tucking it into his jacket pocket. His plan was simple: wait for Tom to come home, hand it to him, and face whatever came next. But as the afternoon wore on, doubt crept in. What if Tom reacted like Diane? What if he lost the only parent he had left? Eli's text buzzed his phone. You got this. Call me after. Caleb smiled, the knot in his chest loosening. Eli's belief in him was a lifeline, pulling him through the fear. When Tom's car pulled into the driveway, Caleb's heart leapt into his throat. He met his father in the living room, where Tom was loosening his tie, looking worn from another long shift at the hardware store. Hey, kid, Tom said, barely glancing up. Good day? Caleb clutched the letter in his pocket. Dad, I need to talk to you. Tom frowned, setting his keys down. What's up? Before Caleb could answer, the front door opened, and Diane walked in, her face tightening at the sight of them. What's going on? She asked, her voice sharp. Caleb's resolve wavered, but he forced himself to stand tall. I wrote something for you, Dad, he said, pulling out the letter. It's important. Diane's eyes locked onto the paper, her expression unreadable. Caleb, maybe now's not the time. No. Caleb cut her off, his voice firm. It's my time. He handed the letter to Tom, his hands steady despite the storm inside him. Tom took it, confusion creasing his brow. He unfolded the paper, his eyes scanning the words. The room was silent, the air thick with tension. Caleb watched his father's face, searching for a reaction: anger, disappointment, anything. But Tom just read, his expression blank. Diane stepped forward, her voice low. Tom. He's confused. He's young. This isn't. Stop, Tom said, his voice quiet but firm. He looked up at Caleb, his eyes heavy with something Caleb couldn't name. You wrote this? Caleb nodded, his throat tight. Yeah. It's me. Tom set the letter down, rubbing his face. I need a minute, he said, standing and walking out to the back porch. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving Caleb and Diane in a suffocating silence. You shouldn't have done that, Diane said, her voice trembling with anger. You're tearing this family apart. Caleb's fists clenched. I'm not the one tearing anything. You burned my first letter. You don't get to decide who I am. Diane's face paled, but she didn't respond. Caleb turned and headed to his room, his heart pounding. He'd done it, told Tom. Now, he just had to wait. That night, Caleb couldn't sit still. He paced his room, his phone buzzing with Eli's texts. How'd it go? You okay? He didn't reply. Not yet. He needed to hear from Tom first. When the knock came, soft but deliberate, Caleb froze. Tom stood in the doorway, the letter in his hand. Can we talk? He asked. Caleb nodded, his stomach churning. They sat on the edge of his bed, the letter between them like a fragile bridge. Tom cleared his throat, his voice rough. I didn't know. Caleb. I should have. But I didn't. Caleb's eyes stung. I was scared you'd hate me. Tom's face softened. And for the first time in years, Caleb saw his father not the distant man who hid behind work, but the one who'd once read him bedtime stories. I don't hate you, Tom said. I'm trying to understand. It's a lot. But you're my son. The words hit Caleb like a wave, washing away years of fear. He wasn't naive. Tom's acceptance wasn't a promise of perfection, but it was a start. Diane told me about the first letter, Tom said, his voice hardening. She shouldn't have done that. I'll talk to her. Caleb nodded, relief mingling with exhaustion. Thanks, Dad. Tom stood, hesitating before resting a hand on Caleb's shoulder. We'll figure this out. Together. After Tom left, Caleb texted Eli. I told him. He's okay, I think. Eli's reply was instant. Proud of you. Creek tomorrow. Caleb smiled, his chest lighter than it had been in months. He'd crossed a line, and there was no going back. But for the first time, that felt like freedom. The next morning, the house felt different, like the air had shifted. Lighter, but fragile. Caleb found Tom in the kitchen, sipping coffee, the letter folded neatly beside him. Diane was nowhere in sight, and Caleb was grateful for the reprieve. He sat across from Tom, the silence between them heavy but not hostile. I meant what I said last night. Tom started, his voice low. You're my son. Always will be. But this is new for me. Caleb, I'm gonna need time. Caleb nodded, his throat tight. I get it. Just don't shut me out. Okay. Tom's eyes met his, steady and worn. I won't. The moment was interrupted by Diane's footsteps. She entered, her face carefully composed, but her eyes flickered with unease. Morning, she said, pouring coffee. Caleb, you're up early. He didn't respond, his focus on Tom. Diane's presence felt like a storm cloud, but Caleb refused to let her overshadow this. He'd told his truth, and Tom hadn't turned away. That was enough for now. At school, Caleb felt like he was walking on air. He found Eli in the cafeteria, his grin infectious. So, you're a badass now, Eli teased, stealing a fry from Caleb's tray. Caleb laughed, the sound foreign but welcome. Not sure about that. But I did it. He knows. Eli's eyes softened. Told you had it in you. They spent lunch talking about nothing: music, movies. The creak in Caleb felt a warmth he hadn't known was possible. Eli's presence was a tether, grounding him in a world that felt newly open. But when the bell rang, reality crept back. Diane was still a problem, and Maplewood wasn't exactly a haven for kids like him. That afternoon, Caleb returned to the art room, his sanctuary. Ms. Rivera was there, sorting paints. You look lighter today, she said, smiling. Caleb shrugged, but a smile tugged at his lips. Told my dad something big. It went okay. Her eyes lit up. That's huge. Caleb, want to make something to celebrate? He nodded, grabbing a canvas. He painted without thinking a burst of color, blues and golds swirling into a figure standing tall. Free. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest, like his letter. When he got home, Diane was waiting. She sat at the kitchen table, her hands clasped, her face tight. Caleb, we need to talk. Alone. He braced himself, setting his bag down. What now? She took a deep breath, her voice low. I know you're angry about the letter. I thought I was protecting you. But Tom told me what you said last night, and I see I was wrong. Caleb blinked, caught off guard. You're admitting it. I'm trying to, she said, her eyes glistening. I grew up in a world where this wasn't okay. I thought I was saving you from pain, but I see now I caused it. Her words were a crack in her armor. But Caleb wasn't ready to forgive. You burned my truth. Diane. That's not something you just apologize for. She nodded, tears spilling over. I know. I'm asking for a chance to make it right. To understand. Caleb's chest tightened. He wanted to believe her. But trust was a long road. I need time, he said finally, echoing Tom's words. She nodded again, wiping her eyes. Fair enough. That night, Caleb met Eli at the creek, the canvas under his arm. He showed it to Eli, who studied it with a quiet intensity. This is you, Eli said, his voice soft, not hiding anymore. Caleb's heart raced. Yeah, I'm trying. Eli stepped closer, his breath warm in the cool evening air. You're doing more than trying. You're incredible. The world narrowed to the space between them. Caleb's fear melted, replaced by a pull he couldn't ignore. He leaned in, and Eli met him halfway, their lips brushing in a kiss that felt like a beginning. It was brief, tentative, but it set Caleb's heart alight. When they pulled back, Eli's grin was back. Softer now. Told you I'm here. Caleb laughed, the sound free and real. For the first time, he felt like he could be himself fully, unapologetically. But as they walked back to town, hand in hand under the cover of dusk, Caleb knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Diane's apology was a start, but Maplewood's eyes were always watching, and Tom's acceptance was still a work in progress. The kiss lingered in Caleb's mind, a spark that refused to fade. He woke the next morning with Eli's grin etched in his memory, the warmth of their moment at the creek a shield against the uncertainty at home. But as he stepped into the kitchen, Diane's presence was a reminder that not everything was resolved. She was quieter now, her usual sharpness dulled. But Caleb kept his distance, wary of her newfound contrition. Tom noticed the tension. At breakfast, he set down his coffee, his eyes moving between Caleb and Diane. Something I should know? He asked, his voice gruff but curious. Caleb hesitated, the letter's weight still heavy in his mind. Just figuring things out, he said, glancing at Diane. She looked away, her hands busy with dishes. Tom nodded, but his frown deepened. We're a family. We talk. No more secrets. Okay. Caleb's chest tightened. No more secrets. It was a promise he wanted to keep. But Diane's shadow loomed large. Okay, he said, his voice steady despite the doubt. At school, Eli was a beacon. They met between classes, stealing moments in quiet corners. Eli's hand brushed Caleb's in the hallway, a secret shared in plain sight. You're glowing, Eli teased, leaning against a locker. Caleb laughed, his cheeks warm. Shut up. But the lightness didn't last. In the cafeteria, Caleb overheard Whisper's classmates glancing his way, their voices low. That new kid, Eli, he's weird. Right. And Caleb's always with him. The words were sharp, slicing through his newfound courage. Maplewood was small, and secrets didn't stay buried long. Eli noticed Caleb's mood shift. Ignore them, he said, sitting across from him. They're just bored. Easy for you to say, Caleb muttered. You're not the one who's lived here forever. Eli's grin faded. I get it. My last town wasn't exactly welcoming either. But you can't let them win. Caleb wanted to believe him, But the whispers followed him, a reminder of the world beyond the creek. He threw himself into his art, painting in MS. Rivera's room after school. She watched him work, her eyes kind. "You're telling a story here," she said, nodding at his canvas, a figure breaking free from chains, surrounded by fire and light. "Keep going." That evening, Caleb came home to find Diane and Tom in the living room, their voices low but tense. He paused in the doorway, catching fragments of their conversation. "Dot needs to understand. Diane, you can't control him," Tom said. "I'm trying," Diane replied, her voice breaking. "I thought I was doing the right thing." Caleb's heart pounded. He stepped inside, drawing their attention. "What's going on?" Tom sighed, rubbing his neck. "Diane told me everything. The letter, the fire. I'm sorry, Caleb. I didn't know." Caleb's anger flared, but it was tempered by Tom's sincerity. "She had no right," he said, his voice low. "But I'm glad you know now." Diane's eyes were red, her hands twisting in her lap. "I want to make this right, Caleb. I'm learning. It's hard, but I'm trying." Caleb didn't respond. Her words were a step, but they didn't erase the hurt. He looked at Tom, searching for an anchor. "What now?" he asked. Tom stood, crossing to him. "Now, we keep talking. You, me, Diane. We're not perfect, but we're family." Caleb nodded, the weight of the word family settling differently now. It wasn't just Diane's claim or Tom's distance, it was something they could build together, if they tried. The next day, Caleb and Eli skipped last period, heading to the creek. The air was crisp, the leaves turning gold. Eli pulled out his sketchbook, showing Caleb a new drawing, a boy with Caleb's eyes, standing in a field of stars. "This is you," Eli said, his voice soft. "Braver than you think." Caleb's heart swelled. He leaned in, kissing Eli again, this time without hesitation. The world fell away, leaving only them, the creek, the stars, and Eli's drawing. For a moment, Caleb felt untouchable. But reality returned with a phone call from Tom. "Caleb, get home. Now." Caleb's stomach dropped. He and Eli rushed back, finding Tom in the driveway, his face grim. "Some kids from your school were here," Tom said. "They spray-painted the garage." Caleb's heart sank as he saw the words scrawled in red, "Freak." His knees buckled, but Eli's hand on his shoulder kept him steady. "Who did this?" Caleb asked, his voice shaking. "Don't know yet," Tom said. "But we'll find out. And we'll fix it." Diane appeared, her face pale. "Caleb, I'm so sorry. This is my fault." "No," Caleb said, his voice firm. "It's theirs. And I'm not hiding anymore." Tom looked at him, pride flickering in his eyes. "You don't have to. We've got your back." The spray paint lingered like a bruise on the garage, a stark reminder of Maplewood's judgment. Caleb couldn't look at it without feeling the word freak burn into his skin. But Tom's words echoed louder, "We've got your back." For the first time, Caleb believed him. At school, the whispers grew bolder. Caleb felt eyes on him in the halls, heard snickers behind his back. Eli stayed close, his presence a shield. But even he couldn't block everything. "They're just cowards," Eli said, his jaw tight as they walked to class. "They'll get bored." Caleb wasn't so sure. He'd lived in Maplewood his whole life, knew how gossip festered. But he refused to shrink. He wore his favorite jaqueta, bright blue one he'd once hidden in his closet, and held his head high. Eli's grin was his reward. "Look at you," Eli said. "Owning it." In art, Caleb poured his anger into his work. His canvas became a battlefield, jagged reds and blacks clashing with bursts of gold. Ms. Rivera watched, her eyes thoughtful. "This is powerful. Caleb, you're saying something big." "It's all I've got," he admitted, his voice low. "Words, they're hard right now." She nodded, understanding. "Then let this speak. Show it to the world." The idea took root. The school's art show was coming up, a chance to display his work publicly. Caleb had always shied away. But now, the thought of showing his truth, his pain, his strength felt like a rebellion. He told Eli over lunch, his voice steady. "I'm entering the art show. Gonna put it all out there." Eli's eyes lit up. "That's my guy. I'm in, let's make it epic." At home, the atmosphere was tense but shifting. Diane was quieter, her usual control replaced by something softer. She helped Tom paint over the garage, her hand steady as she covered the slur. Caleb watched from the porch, unsure how to feel. Her apology had been real, but trust was still a distant goal. Tom noticed his hesitation. "She's trying." "Caleb," he said, wiping paint from his hands. "She's got a lot to unlearn. But she loves you. In her way." Caleb nodded, his throat tight. "I know. It's just hard." Tom clapped a hand on his shoulder. "Life's hard. But you're tougher." The words carried Caleb through the week as he prepared for the art show. He and Eli spent hours in the art room, refining their pieces. Eli's was a vibrant mural of two figures standing together, hands linked, against a stormy sky. Caleb's was Royer, a boy breaking free from chains, surrounded by fire and light. They worked side by side, their laughter and quiet moments weaving a bond stronger than Caleb had ever known. The night of the art show, Maplewood High's gym was transformed. Canvases lined the walls, fairy lights casting a warm glow. Caleb's heart pounded as he hung his piece, the eyes of the town on him. Eli stood beside him, his shoulder brushing Caleb's. "You ready for this?" he asked. Caleb took a deep breath. "Yeah, I am." The crowd was a mix of students, parents, and locals, their murmurs a low hum. Caleb spotted Tom and Diane near the entrance. Tom's face proud, Diane's uncertain but present. Ms. Rivera introduced the show, her voice warm as she praised the students' courage. When she mentioned Caleb's piece, the room turned to him, and he felt exposed but unbreakable. As people moved through the exhibits, Caleb overheard comments, some kind, some sharp, bold. One woman said, "Too much," a man muttered. But Caleb didn't care. His art was his voice, and he was done silencing it. Eli's mural drew gasps, its colors vivid and defiant. A girl from their class, Sarah, lingered in front of it, her eyes wide. "This is about you too, isn't it?" she asked, her voice soft, not cruel. Caleb glanced at Eli, who nodded. "Yeah," Caleb said. "It's us." Sarah smiled, a small act of allyship that felt like a victory. But not everyone was kind. A group of boys from the football team smirked, whispering words Caleb didn't need to hear to understand. He braced himself, but Eli's hand on his arm kept him grounded. "Let them talk," Eli said. "We're bigger than this town." The night ended with Ms. Rivera awarding Caleb's peace an honorable mention. The applause was mixed, but Tom's clap was the loudest, his eyes shining. Diane stood beside him, her smile tentative but real. Caleb felt a flicker of hope maybe she could change. Maybe they all could. As they left the gym, Eli pulled Caleb aside, his grin wide. "You did it. You showed them who you are." Caleb's heart swelled. "We did it. Together." The art show left Caleb buzzing, his heart full but his mind uneasy. Maplewood's reaction part judgment lingered like the spray paint on the garage. He and Eli walked home under a starlit sky, their hands brushing, the silence between them comfortable but charged. "You were fearless tonight," Eli said, his voice warm. Caleb smiled, but the weight of the town's eyes pressed on him. "Not sure about fearless, but I'm done hiding." At home, Tom was waiting on the porch, a rare sight. "Proud of you, kid," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Your mom, she'd have loved that painting." Caleb's throat tightened. Tom rarely mentioned his mother, and the words felt like a gift. "Thanks, Dad." Diane stood in the doorway, her expression softer than Caleb had ever seen. "It was beautiful, Caleb," she said. I'm starting to understand." Caleb nodded, unsure how to respond. Her words were progress, but the memory of the burned letter still stung. He wanted to believe her, but trust would take time. The next few weeks were a delicate balance. Caleb and Eli grew closer, stealing moments at the creek, their kisses bolder, their laughter freer. But school was a battleground. The football team's whispers turned to taunts, and Caleb found notes in his locker crude words meant to wound. He showed one to Eli, who tore it up, his eyes blazing. "They're scared of you," Eli said. "You're stronger than they'll ever be." Caleb clung to that, but the pressure was relentless. One afternoon, he found Tom in the garage, painting over a new slur. "This stops now," Tom said, his voice hard. "I'm talking to the school tomorrow." Caleb's heart sank. "Dad, that might make it worse." Tom turned, his face fierce. "You're my son. No one gets to hurt you." The meeting with the principal was tense but effective. The culprit's 3 boys from the team were suspended, and the school promised a workshop on inclusion. It wasn't a cure, but it was a start. Caleb felt a shift, like the town was bending, however slightly. Diane surprised him one evening, sitting at the kitchen table with a book on understanding LGBTQ+ youth. "I'm reading," she said, her voice hesitant. "I want to get this right." Caleb studied her. The woman who'd once burned his truth, now trying to learn. Why? He asked, his voice soft but guarded. Because you're family, she said simply. And I was wrong. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was enough to keep the door open. Caleb nodded. A small weight lifting. As winter settled over Maplewood, Caleb and Eli planned their future. They talked about college. About cities where they could be themselves without fear. Eli's optimism was infectious. And Caleb's art became bolder. His canvases filled with hope. He painted one for Toma, portrait of their family. Fractured but healing. With Caleb at the center. Unapologetic. The night before graduation, Caleb and Eli sat by the creek. Their hands linked. You changed me, Caleb said. His voice thick. Made me brave. Eli kissed him. Soft and sure. You were always brave. I just helped you see it. Graduation came. And Caleb walked across the stage. His heart full. Tom and Diane cheered. Their faces proud. The town still whispered. But Caleb didn't care. He'd found his voice. His love. His family, not the one he was born into, but the one he was building. As he tossed his cap into the air, Caleb felt the weight of the past lift. The letter was gone, but its truth lived in him. In Eli. In the family they were forging. Maplewood could judge. But Caleb was free to love. To create. To be. And that was enough.